And we're back. You are listening to SeeThroughPanel. My name is Cole Harvey. I am here with Fahed Rahman.
Hello, everyone.
Today we're going to be talking about Strange Skies over East Berlin, a serialized comic book from Boom Studios, written by Jeff Loveness and illustrated by Alessandro Esterin. Fahed, why don't you tell him what's up?
Strange Skies over East Berlin. Chilling and intense thriller about an American spy who encounters a terrifying inhuman threat at the heart of the Cold War. East Berlin, 1973. Herring, a disillusioned American spy, has spent the entire Cold War infiltrating the inner circle of the East German intelligence for a cause he barely believes in anymore. He's seen everything and done anything his government has asked, but his latest mission pits the brilliant, embittered operative against an enemy force so vast it could obliterate all of humanity. The space race had greater consequences than even the Soviets could have guessed. And when they sent the first humans into the stars, something not quite human followed them back. When a mysterious alien probe lands outside East Berlin and into the Soviet control, Americans send their top spies to investigate. But as Herring gets closer to the truth at the heart of the conspiracy, he may find that the power he does so desperately seeks is too dangerous for anyone to control or contain. So I think we need to kind of go straight into spoilers. I mean, that description is quite spoilery already.
Yeah.
This was one of my recommendations, and the reason why I chose it is because it was on NetGalley, and it just seemed like a intriguing story. And I think kind of the best way for me to describe it is like it's kind of the Ipcris files meets The Thing. That's how
Okay.
that's how I would describe it. What did you what were your initial thoughts about it?
I had heard about this when it was coming out, but I never read it. I figured it was like a sci-fi thriller, which it kind of is. I knew it was about the divide of Berlin, so like in 1973 this takes place or something like that.
Yes, yeah,
Uh, I knew it was I knew it was going to be East Berlin, but I pretty much didn't know anything else. I didn't know if it was going to lean sci-fi or horror or what, but it clearly, if we're doing spoilers, it's both. It leans
yes,
both sci-fi or horror. Yeah.
yes. It's kind of there are a lot of different layers to the story. So it kind of starts off like a spy thriller. He's in East Berlin, and kind of one of the key moments that affects the rest of the story is that he's trying to help. What's the correct word I'm looking for? Some dissidents climb over the wall, and that attempt ends badly, and kind of I think the Soviets main spy catcher. He's not too sure whether this guy's seen him or not, and then he's kind of sent to find out about this glowing red beam that's kind of shot over the skies of East Berlin.
I thought that was really really fun when right at the beginning it sets up an interesting like tension because when Kiner, the guy who's really good at catching spies, he may or may not have seen his face, is really good tension because you don't know every other time you see Kiner now, you don't know if he's like trying to catch him or if he already knows or what. I thought it was
Yes,
very good.
there is one thing kind of I would say when you look at the cover of at least the cover of the trade paperback, it's kind of this very moody kind of sci-fi thing, and then when you kind of go to the first page, I'm not saying that the art is kind of like this thing that we talked about before, where kind of like the interior arts are quite a bit different to what you're expecting if you
Yeah.
opened up the cover. It's very 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 nice art though, but yes, I think that kind of initial tension that's set up between Herring and Kleiner is kind of something that runs all the way through kind of the story. Have you ever watched the TV show The Americans?
I have not. I've heard of it
Okay,
though.
yes, it is. it's one of my main complaints in life. First world problem that not enough people have watched The Americans. So for me, that's kind of like the very top tier of espionage drama. It's kind of like when people talk about uh, kind of these comedies and kind of they always talk about how Spinal Tap's at the best. So for me, kind of like The Americans at the best, best thing you can get. So when I initially read it, I was kind of a bit derivative, kind of um, this spy's kind of fed up with his lot in life, but it quickly kind of moves on from that. So it did a very good thing in kind of overcoming an initial hurdle I had of kind of not being the Americans, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I think so. So it's nice to have that like little bit of like twist in there, like something to set it apart. You mean?
Yes, yeah, it's something to set it apart. Because a lot of the initial internal dialogue, that's kind of, if you're familiar with like the spy genre oeuvre, it's something you've probably come across before. Kind of like this, James Bond, kind of like this bitter spy that's kind of fed up with what his taskmasters are setting him to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. I never thought of him as like a all that capable person. I kind of thought of him as like a person who's been faking it for so long that people think he's capable.
Yes, I think that's actually, if going further into, I think that's probably something that's actually probably very true. He comes across as someone who's quite frightened all the time.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I like that a lot. It's like he's trying to do his job with this other, I guess, Stasi agent Kiner, and but he knows Kiner's better at this, and Kiner actually believes in the what should I say? He kind of believes in what they're doing, and this what is this main character's name? I completely forgot.
Herring. I
Herring.
don't think
Okay.
they mention him by name too often, so I don't think. I mean, I only remember him being called Herring because I've just literally read the description of the book. Yeah,
I think I just reread like half of the first issue before I jumped on here, and I
yeah,
don't think they said his name at all. I guess it's not really a big plot point, but
yeah.
yeah, I thought it was set apart pretty well. I haven't seen a ton of spy movies, but I'm familiar with the obvious tropes that they fall into, and
Yeah.
this seemed to avoid them after a little while.
After all, um, kind of, I don't know what you felt about this. I just felt kind of it focused on they're only what would you say, three or four characters in the story. We've got Herring, we've got Klein, and then we've got the head of the scientific research facility. Those are kind of your three main players, aren't they?
Yeah, those are pretty much the. I guess this is the first time I'll spoil it. The monster. It's pretty
Oh
much
yes,
it.
okay, yes, the monster.
I don't know if
Um,
you'd call him a character, but he's a monster.
yes, yeah. So the reason why I would say kind of this is kind of like a spy thriller meets the theme, because the very much like the thing, they're kind of at this frozen outpost. The monsters kind of deep inside this research facility, and it's trying to get out.
Yes, it is. I really like that because I like between all my friends, I'm known to love a bottle story. Like, and if you don't know what that is, like an isolated story, like if they're locked in a room for a whole movie, or if it's like a TV show about just a small island. I love that type of stuff where everyone's kind of like stuck together, and you have to basically all the tension comes from the people bouncing off each other, which I
Yes,
think is super interesting, and it lets like actors, or in this case, like character acting and art, shine. So I really like that concept. Just like so that had me as soon as I realized we'd be spending most of the series in a bunker. I love
yes,
that type of thing.
and it also kind of ratchets up the tension. It's kind of that line out of the Watchmen. It's kind of are they stuck? Is the creature stuck in there with them, or are they stuck in there with the creature?
Yes, which I don't even know if they explained that like to the fullest. Like I don't even know if the creature in the end wanted to be in there or not. Like yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
it's kind of it's it's kind of basically the creature's able to infect other people, and they start kind of bleeding this kind of blue stuff out of their eyes and mouths, and basically takes kind of brain control over the. And kind of the first time that happens in the comic book, it's quite a shocking image. I wasn't expecting that from this story. In terms of, I was expecting it to be more of a spy drama than kind of like a sci-fi horror thing.
Yeah, that was a super, I think, a really good twist because it happens in the middle of a page, and he sits
Yes.
down to interview a guy, which he's obviously going to do because it's his job. And then he starts asking him questions, and the guy just says, "Open the door," and his eyes turn blue, and he starts like bleeding out this blue like string stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a really good reveal. I really liked that reveal. And in general, I think the monster is pretty well designed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
makes it pretty scary. Pretty original too, I would say.
Yeah. It says a lot about what's his name. What's the name of the Russian spy master again? Is it Kleiner?
Kiner.
Kiner. That I was slightly more afraid of Kiner than I was of what the monster was doing, because he looks absolutely kind of like
Yeah.
determined, and I think, I don't know if the right word is zealot, but it's just kind of like he's absolutely kind of hardcore. This is my job. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that I catch everyone that's trying to attack my country.
Yeah, he is more menacing, I think, than the monster. At least for the first like three issues, because he could just shoot you. The
Yeah,
monster will have to like torture you or like whatever, like mess with you, but he'll just shoot you, and you don't know. And there's that 50-50 thing going where you don't even know if he's onto him or if he's gonna be onto him soon.
yeah. That was so well done. Kind of that interrogation scene where Kiner and Herring are kind of like sat across from each other in this kind of battle of wits, and he's kind of break first. I thought that was like, superbly well done.
Yeah, the dialogue's pretty sharp in this whole thing,
Yeah,
honestly. That was a standout scene, but this I really like the dialogue in this. I like the woman, the leader of the scientist kind of woman. I don't remember her name at all. Her introduction line is hilarious cuz Herring comes in alone and she just says, "I asked for a whole truck of you perverts," and I thought that was hilarious.
it's fun. Like, just kind of referring back to the Americans, she very much kind of reminds me of the American Russian spy master. So that's kind of like, I kind of know where they're kind of getting their inspiration from with that character. But it was, yeah, still she adds kind of some of the best lines in the book. I felt that this story, that the pace of the story was really good in terms of like, it just, for me, I just zipped through it.
Yeah, I read it all in like I read the first half during a car ride and then walked in my house, sat down and read the second half.
Yes,
Because
it's
it was very it pulled me along the whole time, and it's quite short, so it'll like force you to read it in one sitting.
yeah, and it's, I mean, it is quite short, but I think it's, for me, kind of sometimes a comic book can drag and can kind of be slower paced. But for me, even though I kind of read it quite quickly, it's also still quite satisfying as well. It's kind of like a really kind of, sometimes you just need to read something where it's a bit of escapism, and for me, this was just a perfect bit of I wouldn't say necessarily B movie, but it's kind of that thing where it's kind of not necessarily too deep.
Yeah, like the weird fiction type, kind of like the Willows for me, because the Willows is like weird fiction, and this kind of hits the same, or it makes you think a little bit, but also it's just a bunch of scary stuff and kind of stuff
Yes,
that doesn't make sense. I thought it was that, and a little bit of historical fiction, which I always love, like a good twist on like East Berlin.
yeah,
I thought we haven't said anything. I thought we did pretty well because usually we only talk about the art, but we
yes,
haven't even talked about it yet.
yeah. So the art, I think, is remarkable. I think for me the standout bit of the art is the coloring. So I want to give a shout out to the colorist, if I can find the credit page. I believe the colorist is Patricio Delpech. I think he did a superb job with the coloring. Quite honestly, it's kind of, how would you describe it? The
It
coloring.
is. so very moody. Like he does a lot of almost like as if he was working in black and white. He shades almost everything with like this. It doesn't look like ink. It looks like fog almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything looks very foggy and gloomy, and like there's shadows cutting through, and the only light is coming from, which I thought is really well done, is coming from like actual light sources. So when there's not light sources on the page, everything is very dark.
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to kind of these days reading comic books that have been kind of digitally colored. So I'm just trying to figure out how he did it, whether it was inks, but it looks very kind of like watery and fluid on the page.
It's either real or digital watercolors. I don't know which. It's
Yes.
hard to tell. I would like to think they're real, but that would be really crazy if in the modern day someone was mailing their pages to their colorist and he was watercoloring them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like for me that's kind of one of the bits that I really appreciate because as you mentioned, it does kind of set a real atmosphere, especially in kind of the early pages. Kind of Berlin looks kind of dangerous and kind of full of intrigue, and then we get kind of sent down into the bunker, and again, kind of especially with the effects, kind of like on the monster, kind of the design of the monster is I think really kind of terrifying when you put it into when you add the kind of like coloring effect to it.
If this book was colored worse, I think the monster would be less effective because that blue glow from it. So you get that effect of a monster movie where you know if it's around the corner. I think is really good
Yes,
because
yeah,
everything starts to glow. Yeah, I also love the way he uses colors. So in the first one of my favorite panels in the whole book is in the first issue. It's the very last panel of the entire first issue. It's like if you ended a TV show with like a slow zoom to a character's face during a tense moment. It's just that bright red panel of just Kiner's eyes, and I
yes,
thought it was very very like tone setting. It told you so much, and it was great cliffhanging. He does that red for the same type of effect when the scientist goes and the monster's first revealed, and the guy gets like taken over or whatever's happening.
yeah,
He's so good with color. It's insane. The reds and blues like contrast so well. Uh yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
and I think the other thing that Estheren does especially well is kind of his. We've talked about a bit before about in other comic books, kind of shot selection and kind of choosing which angles you're presenting the characters at, and he does an exceptional job of doing both kind of the intimate conversational interrogation bits, but also the action scenes as well are also really well done.
Yeah, yeah, he does like the small action panels really well. I think a lot of artists that do good dialogue also do pretty great action because they have the character acting down, and action is basically just
Mm,
like multiple poses and like good character alignment in the fight. Because he does both of those so strongly, I kind of like felt as if when they were happening, they were almost the same thing. The scene between Kiner and Herring, where Herring's getting interrogated, is probably more actiony than any of the actual fight scenes to me, and it was incredibly well done. So I think those two things translate across pretty well.
yeah, I think yeah, he's kind of again kind of he's sat in that I'm looking at the sequence now. He's sat in this red room. I mean, a room where there's kind of this glowing red light, and he's trying to put bullshit his way through this conversation, and yeah, it's kind of I love the way he does these subtle facial expressions as well, kind of looking down at him. The eyebrows are kind of like arched, and he's kind of staring back at kind of you know with kind of this earnest disbelief, kind of I don't understand what's going on here. You need to explain it to me, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many examples of incredible character acting, and I think the colorist actually helps that too because I think he's the one doing this washy watercolor looking effect,
Yeah,
and I think that sets sets the tone for all the dialogue really well when you like are covering up parts of characters' faces with that effect. It's very gloomy and good, and I don't know. I can't say much else about that. It's just like it's beautiful. I don't know how you could not like this. I think it's
Yeah,
professionally done, and even if you don't like the style, you have to at least see that it's effective.
yeah. I don't think it's not like the. I wouldn't say how anyone would be able to say that this is an acquired taste. There's kind of some art styles that you'd say kind of well, you can kind of understand why some people wouldn't like it. But for me, this is while not being quite a kind of like classical thing. There's much to be kind of admired about kind of the clean lines of the human characters and kind of I think that contrasts nicely with this with the weird alien that twists up into these weird shapes and you can't quite make out what angles it's approaching things from.
It's a good way of putting it. I like that. He's got a very odd like proportions and perspective, and it does clash really hard with everything else in the book. I just want to point out one more of my favorite panels, just because I think it's awesome. I think it was issue 4. No, maybe it was issue 3. It's right after the Kiner and Herring debate or argument or whatever, and there's just like it's when Herring asks Kiner if he's seen it too, and it's just a empty panel of just Kiner's like eyes looking sad, or I guess I don't know exactly the emotion, looking something. And I thought
Yeah,
that was very cool way to do that. It's a cool way to end a page to like leave that white space at the bottom.
yeah,
I don't know. The art has a lot of like artistic choices that I feel like are experimental but work super well here, and I can't really disagree with them in any way.
yeah. It's kind of in in the hands of kind of artists that were kind of less capable. This could have come across as kind of very hokey and kind of bland, kind of because there's not a lot actually happens in the story in terms of like general plot. It's kind of they get sent back down to the bunker. There's a bit of a clash, and then whatever what happens at the end happens at the end. So it is really kind of a lot of it's about the way the art kind of shows what the characters are going through.
I think earlier when you said it was maybe a little B movie, it would have 100% been B movie with some mediocre art, because I think the script kind of lends itself to that kind of genre. But this art, I think, elevates it into just being a good story. I would say I
Yeah,
quite enjoyed it.
and there's um, I think something you mentioned as well, kind of the you know the characters. Our main protagonists, kind of do kind of go on a journey with them as well.
Yeah, you kind of for most people, you get a small arc even with the woman. You get a pretty much an arc with every character, I would say. Maybe not a full, not as full of an arc as with Herring, but you connect with them, I think, in a
Yeah,
short amount of time.
yeah. I mean, it's 4 issues. How many pages is it? It's 115 pages, and you just whiz through it. It's so easy to read. Kind of the pacing. Is risk of repeating myself is I think pretty much pitch perfect.
I would agree. I don't think I've talked about the pacing, but it is very good. It's like it'll keep you on the edge of your seat type of thing. I don't think there's a way, unless you're strapped for time, that you could read this not in one sitting. It is fast, but also it's like it's meaty. It's got a lot there. I think it's quite the package.
So you mentioned you'd kind of heard about this book before. I think it's trade paperback. It's 4 collected issues. Did because it's not a comic book I'd heard of before I came across it on Nick. Did you hear any kind of like buzz about it at all?
Yeah, so I'm on the comic books Reddit a lot, subreddit, and there was a lot of talk about issue 1,
Hmm.
like quite a bit, because that's kind of the people there, I think, are I take their opinion as the larger comics opinion, and they like a nice like change of pace sometimes,
Yeah.
even though average comic reader likes a change of pace from superheroes. But then with most things, after issue 2 came out, I didn't hear a thing about it. So which I think is kind of sad now that I've read it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is sad because I think it's, I think part of the reason why we're doing this podcast is maybe shining a light on books that deserve a little bit more publicity. And yeah, I hadn't heard about it at all, and I think that's kind of a shame. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. Kind of we've read some comics that have been quite heavy and deep, but for me, it's just a fun read, and sometimes that's what you want from your comic books.
100% agree. That's often what I want from my comic books. I think that a lot of people get too into like being overly serious with their stuff or being locked into one thing, and this is like so. It's just so refreshing.
Yeah, is I think that you're absolutely right there. Kind of comic book people, like everyone else, kind of you've got your genres that you like, and you kind of stick to that. But I think this is, this. I mean, it's so much fun. It's tense, it's suspenseful, it's got tight characters as well. So I mean, tight plot. The characters are kind of well drawn, and kind of everything makes sense within the world in which it's set as well.
Yeah, it's also really good because of that multi-genre aspect. Because you could get historical fiction people, sci-fi people, maybe definitely horror people. You could get a lot of different audiences with this because it's like such a melding of genres.
Yeah, and it's quite tricky to get that right, don't you think?
Yeah, it's usually pretty hard. 'Cause usually that you'd see like a sci-fi horror or like something like that, like two genres. But I feel like this is at least three or four because it's got all these crazy aspects.
So it's a spy drama. It's kind of like historical fiction as well, because there's a bit about where he kind of talks about these protests that I wasn't aware of, these protests that
Yeah.
he went down to quash. So there's a bit of historical fiction in there as well. Then you've got like the sci-fi element, and then there's a really strong kind of horror inflection as well. And then there's kind of like the human drama that goes on within the story as well.
Oh yeah, very human themes. I don't know if I ever remember to talk about that, but the themes I think are like they come across super clearly without being like in the dialogue. Like you hate when a book explains to you what it's about, but this kind of like you'll know what it's about. It's clearly about like truth and regret and a bunch of things like that. And it comes across so clearly without being hitting you over the head.
Yeah, I think definitely truth and regret are to the main things. I think the other thing that kind of came through really strongly for me as well is kind of the monster is able to kind of like infect people's minds. So it's kind of, what do you do when you find out who you really are? I think that's another thing that kind of comes through really strongly
Yeah,
as well.
I hadn't thought of that. I definitely think that's right. Yeah, it makes you face all the things that you don't want to face. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of who you really are. So I mean, I think that's kind of, we've been chatting for about, I think, 30 minutes. I don't think there's that too much more to discuss about the book. I think I'd very, very highly recommend this. I think trade paperback. Do we know how much it costs? Have you got like the Amazon listing there at all?
You vamp for a second. Keep going, and I'll look it up.
Yeah, so I very, very would very much highly recommend this. It's beautifully illustrated. The writing is very, very good, and if you like your spy dramas, there's something in there for you. If you like your comics to be fun, it's kind of, it's almost, I don't want to say it's like a Mission Impossible movie, because there's not as much action in this comic as a Mission Impossible movie, but it's kind of like those moments of like tension, and that you get from spy dramas. Is he going to be discovered?
Hmm. And when was the last time you got a spy drama that like also kind of horrified you and there was a monster in it? Pretty rare.
Yeah, pretty rare. I have read a few kind of spy drama comics before, and the true monster is always man. Unfortunately,
The you're right. You're right.
yeah.
The paperback goes for $15
Oh, it's well worth that.
here in the U.S. Amazon. I assume it's the same.
Yeah, I think it'd
I
be.
also see. Oh, go on.
No, no, yeah, go ahead.
I also see, just from a quick glance, I'm not going to get into it. It's got 3 stars on Amazon, only 7 reviews, but I'm going to leave a review now. I'm going to buy it and leave a review because it's a 5-star book, I think.
I think it's a 5-star book. I mean, I don't know if we've discussed this before, but I hate the 5-star rating system. I think it's bullshit. I
Agreed.
understand. I think the best rating system is the Dante Nero Patrice O'Neill rating system, which they rate everything out of 30, whereas 0 to 10 is bad, 10 to 20 is okay, mediocre, medium, and then 20 to 30 is good. So like 15 would be something that's average. And then like for me, this is, if I was scoring on that scale, this is like 27, 28. I think it's a superb book. It's so much fun, and yes, it's a great read. That's shocking. It's only 3 stars on Amazon. Shame on
I
you
know.
guys. You
Only
got bad
seven
taste.
reviews, right?
Okay.
With 7 reviews, we could change that with just a couple reviews. So
Yeah. So
I think it
yeah.
deserves better than that.
Yeah. So I think that's it for Strange Skies of Eastburn. What are your kind of closing thoughts on it, Cole?
I think there's a little bit here for everybody. I think it's quite the enjoyable read. It's not too long. You can sit through it and just clear it out in one, like maybe 45 minutes if you like to linger on the art. An hour, I don't know. Clearly longer, obviously, if you like to admire it. But yeah, I think a lot of people would like this book. I think probably not a lot of people saw it, and it's not getting a lot of buzz, and maybe not the best reviews, even though there's not that many of them. But I think with a little exposure, this could be like one of the best books to come out recently in the serialized format.
Yeah, I would concur with that. When I kind of announced that we were doing this book on Instagram, we did get a couple of comments saying kind of that it's a pretty book to look at, which it absolutely is. But yeah, it's I would highly recommend it. So I think that the next book we're doing is one of your choices. Do you want to tell the audience what that is?
Yes. So it is a collection of short stories by Sergio, I believe it's Topi or Topi.
Yep.
He's an Italian illustrator. It's called The Collected Topi, The Enchanted World. So it's the first volume, and that's published by Magnetic Press in some really beautiful hardcovers, which
Yeah.
I own the first 2 of, and they are awesome.
I am probably going to download a digital copy of that because I've looked online over here and they're going for quite a lot of money. Over here is kind of like 30 quid, 25,
Oh
30 quid,
man,
which is at the moment quite a lot of money for me. So yeah, guys,
yeah.
please, if you can kind of donate so I can actually start buying some of the books that we're going to be reviewing. There's a digital version on Comixology, so I'll probably download that. It'd be quite interesting to kind of contrast and compare our experiences over that. Kind of any final thoughts, Cole?
I'll give this tip now. I was going to do it in the next one, but I'll do both. The collected Toppy books are out of print or out of stock everywhere, and they're like $100. But the publisher, Magnetic Press, has them all, and I just bought 2 of them for like $20 a piece.
Oh,
So if anyone wants to buy that, I don't know where they ship. I don't know if they still have them, but about a week ago they still had them.
okay. So I will. Yeah, that's a good tip, guys. Good tip, Cole. I'll check on their website because I was looking around and kind of like it'd be 25, 30 quid and then kind of like shipping on top of that. So I'll there's a digital copy on Comixology as well. Okay, guys,
Digital's always cheapest.
we'll speak to you guys next week.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks for listening, guys.
Okay, cool.